Hello once again, NASCAR fans. Welcome back to another episode of the NASCAR Show on the Grilling Truth Playoff Edition. I'm Alex Gray, along here with Steve Risley. We had a very, very exciting race at Talladega this past weekend. A lot of craziness, a lot of great racing, and surely a lot of wrecks took place in this race. Lots to cover, as well as some breaking news that came out just this morning. Wednesday morning, funny enough. So, let's dive into it. The NASCAR Cup Series running. Also, I do want to talk about the truck race real quick first. I just realized that. So, the Truck Series ran at Talladega. That race was equally as crazy. Johnny Sauter had the lead coming to the checkered flag. He basically, Riley Herbst, who was driving one of Kyle Busch's trucks, went to the inside line, and basically, Sauter went down and kind of forced him down below the double yellow line. And when they came to the line, Johnny Sauter assumingly took the victory because he had won. But NASCAR went back and reviewed it and said that he had forced Herbst down below the double yellow line. Therefore, he got penalized. The win was taken away, and Spencer Boyd gets his first career truck win. Boyd is also driving for Young's Motorsports. That's also their first ever truck win. So, kind of an odd way to get your first win, but still a huge moment for him and that race team. Big deal for those guys. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick. It was quite a controversial finish, and a huge congrats to Spencer Boyd. All right, moving on to the Cup Series. We had, and especially those final few laps were absolutely just, I was shaking. And I was like, oh, my gosh, what's going to happen? You know, Newman got the lead, and then suddenly Blaney just snuck down on the inside, and Ryan Blaney got his first win of the season, a very much-needed win that's going to put him in the round of 8, and it's also his third career Cup Series win, and oddly enough, it's his first win in the Cup Series that on a track that has 4 turns, because he won Pocono in 2017 and the Charlotte Roval in 2018. So just some fun, interesting facts there. I think things got shaken up, and we're going into elimination race next week. Kansas. What are your thoughts on Talladega, Steve?
It's Talladega, baby. I mean, it's the funnest race. I mean, as a driver, I know that drivers don't like that track because of the way you race. And I'm watching Brendan Gaughan. He's like Ricky Bobby. I'm flying, and this can't be good.
Yep. Oh my
Plus, it's already walked away from it without getting hurt. That's the great thing. He didn't get hurt, and
yes.
You know, a car got wrecked, but he walked away from it. But it's Talladega, and it's the only race really next to Daytona where the improbable is going to happen. You're going to have like Ryan Blaney, who has been competitive all year. There's no doubt. What would be going through your mind when you're flipping upside down at 200 miles an hour in a car?
I mean,
it happens in a split second. Anyway, but that's the beauty of Talladega and restricted. Well, we call it spacer racing now, I guess, but still basically restrictor plate racing is what it is, essentially. But it took 2 days to get the race in because they got rained out on Sunday and couldn't get the race in night. They came back on Monday and ran it. And I mean, it's as a fan, it's the most fun race of the year to watch, I think. And it's not because of the big one, just because of the pack racing and everybody staying together and the jockeying for position. And you can start 25th or whatever. I mean, Elliott got caught up in an early wreck, and they rebuilt his car without losing a lap, and he came back and finished in the top 10. And it's just done that way. So it's a good event for fans. I don't think the drivers really like it a lot, but good for Ryan Blaney. I mean, he shook the standings up entirely now. I mean, the standings. Oh yeah. And we'll get into the standings. I mean, they're a mess now because this is not a guy who you thought was going to win a race, and now you have 3 Hendrick cars in the bottom 4. you've got Bowman, Elliott, and who's the third driver? 24 car. Who drives 24 car? I'm losing my mind right now.
Byron.
Yeah, Byron. Yeah, they're all on the bottom two, so they're out. So Hendrick could possibly be out of this weekend if they don't go to Kansas City and do well. I thought the race itself was entertaining. Lead changes like crazy. So I had fun watching it. I don't know that I'd want to drive it. I don't know that I'd want to be a car owner and see my $200,000 race car get blowed up.
Yeah, I'm sure Talladega and Daytona are just like, car owners are just like, oh,
I know.
God. Let's just get through this week. Yeah, that's what it feels like. I'm not going to lie. When I saw, and Brendan Gaughan's interview after his flip was just amazing and hilarious at the same time. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I saw him flip. I really screamed. I was like, oh, my God. It's just like, he just completely took off completely from the ground. But, yeah, thankfully, Gaughan is all right. Obviously, that's the most important thing.
Right.
When it comes to these wrecks, everybody's all right. And, oh, man, yeah, there was one moment where Logano was absolutely charging, and Bowman tried to do the typical Talladega move, trying to throw a block, and that did not end well for him. That's what took out funny enough, a lot of the Chevrolets in that wreck. I remember, Bowman got a big wreck, Byron got taken out. Elliott was in there, but was able to keep going. He got the top 10 at the end of the day. I know Kurt Busch was in that. So, I mean, it's Talladega, and it was an amazing race. You really didn't know who was going to win until the very last lap.
Well, that's how Talladega is. Okay, so let's have this discussion real quickly. And, we don't spend a lot of time on it, but how it seems to me that when I watched the race, part of it on the first stage on Sunday and the last three stages on Monday, how stupid has blocking gotten? I mean, do they need to do something to control the blocking, or is that just the way it's going to be? Because the closure rate on these cars, on some guys that are coming up, like when Logano, I think, got into somebody, and there's cars coming up back. They're in the pack, getting the draft and pulling forward. But this blocking thing, has this gotten out of hand now with the blocking, in your opinion?
I mean, Bowman made a risky move. Honestly, I mean, I think it's fine as it is. Let them race. I mean, if they block, they block. That's their own decision in order to keep the lead or keep their position. I mean, it's just part of racing. So, obviously I looked at it again.
You're wrecking a lot of cars, and you're putting a lot of people in peril. That's the problem. And it's not only just happening at super speedways like Talladega and Daytona. I mean, blocking has now become, and I watch a lot of F1, and they block a ton in F1 too. I mean, it's just become a thing here. But I looked at it and said, man, this blocking thing has just got, because guys were shifting lanes so fast, and closure rates were coming in from the top lane down to the bottom lane, and they're getting together. And it's like, man, you can't just jump in front of this guy because they're coming at you at 5 to 10 miles an hour faster than you at 200 miles an hour. And you can't just do that. That's crazy. And now you've got somebody, if one person breaks, everybody's got to break. It's like trying to drive the 405 in Los Angeles. It's nuts. I mean, we drive it every day. We live on the 405, basically. It's crazy. So I don't know if NASCAR needs to do something about that. Do you think you just let it go?
I mean, as of right now, I'd say let it go.
Okay.
NASCAR
right.
F1
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's not fun for Brendan Gaughan.
Oh, yeah.
He's doing his best Ricky Bobby imitation. I'm flying. This can't be good.
Yeah, or Lightning McQueen crash in Cars 3. But, yeah, I see where you're coming from. But I think as of right now.
It's gotten out of hand. It's gotten to the point to where when I watch cars just shift, and Stenhouse was guilty of this. Everybody's out front. They just jump forward, top lane, bottom lane, trying to slow a lane down. And then you back everything up and you create the mess. And as a fan, it's like, oh, here's the big one. And here we go. But as far as a team owner, a driver, a competitor, I think it's gotten a little bit of a hand for those guys, this blocking thing. So, but I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to fix it. I mean, if you're in the lead, it's your race. So you can do what you want to do. That's the whole thing, and I appreciate that. If you're in the lead, it's your race. But so here we go. Talladega's only really, to me, important the last 20 laps of the race. Everything else, you're just hanging on there. You're trying to stay out. If there is a big one, but the last 20 laps is when it starts to matter. And that's the great thing about Talladega, is that you can shift positions from 20 to first in 2 laps. If you can get in the right lane, you can get in the right groove, and you can move forward. So it's typical Talladega. It was a very fun race to watch on TV. I probably would not be happy as a driver driving that. All the drivers don't like Talladega, but it is what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just part of racing.
Well, racing on super speedways with spacer plates now instead of restrictor plates.
Mm-hmm.
Open the cars up and let them go. Let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Although they would be running 220 miles an hour now. I mean, they would be running that fast, which is amazing. Anything else about Talladega? Great win for Ryan Blaney. Shuffled the points up big time. Where are we on the points thing?
All right.
We got Bowman, Elliott, and Boyer and Byron on the outside looking in right now. None of them really, unless they get a win, have a chance to get in. So Bowman's 18 points down. Elliott is 22 points down. Boyer is 24 points down, and Byron is 27 points down. So, and Kyle Busch has fallen to 5th place. Logano's on the cut line. He's plus 18. Bowman's minus 18. So there are a lot of drivers here that have to go to Kansas. They're going to Kansas City, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. They just going to have to flat out win the race now. I think all the bottom 4 teams have to win the race. I don't think Elliott can make up 22 points. I don't think Boyer can make up 24 points. Byron 27 points. He's done. Bowman at 18 points. With Logano with 18 points plus, I don't think Bowman can make it up either. So I think the Hendrick cars are done for Kansas City. What's going on at Hendrick? I mean, they all of a sudden have just kind of become not very competitive. Do you have any insight into that at all, or any thought process on that?
I really don't. Obviously, Chase got the win at the Royal Bowl, and Chase is pretty much been the lead guy with 3 wins. Bowman as well got a win this year. He's had an improving season for sure, and Byron's had an improving season. I think Hendrick's going to continue to improve, and eventually, with Bowman, Elliott, and Byron, I think eventually that those 3 are going to start winning races a lot more. I personally believe one reason why Hendrick has struggled is because they lost that star power. Jeff Gordon, and then Dale Jr., and then Casey Kane. And, of course, Johnson's still there. But, of course, he's been struggling. So,
well, sticking with Hendrick, what do you do with Jimmy Johnson? I mean, do you retire him and say thank you for the 7 championships, or do you let him continue? Because, I mean, he's basically not competitive anymore. I mean, he'll run up front for a few laps, but then, and again, I'm watching clips of the race right now, and he's in another wreck. Is it time just to say Hendrick needs to entirely retool, with Jimmy Johnson, or do they stay with him and keep him on as the elder statesman and let him have a ceremonial time like they did with Petty? And of course, Richard owned his own team, so that was a different deal. But the 48 car has not been competitive all season long, really, truthfully.
And there have been times where I feel like they have shown signs of improvement, but then it's always he gets caught in a wreck. Something happens to his car. Some of it's been bad luck on his end. And it's just like, jeez, can he catch a break? So, honestly, looking at
well, and you say that, but I'm 60 years old, okay? So
mm-hmm.
I've never been in a wreck. So mm-hmm. I don't get caught up in the wreck. I understand how to, as best as you can, because I'm not doing it at 200 miles an hour like these guys are with 39 other idiots who, want to win. I get it's the big difference there, but it's like, it just seems all of a sudden, it's like every weekend, it's the 48 car is torn up, blown up, wrecked, or maligned for some reason or another. Is it just time for Jimmy just to say, hey, I'm among Earnhardt, I'm among Petty, I'm one of the three best? Do you think he's ever going to win a championship again?
As of right now, I don't think he will, but I still think he can get into victory lane, especially that Johnson has also said on the Dale Jr. download that he does want to keep racing. Of course, that could change, but he has said that relatively recently.
All right, so back to Hendrick. Do we know who their director of competition is? I think I asked you that question off air. I don't know who it is. I tried to look it up. I couldn't find it. Haas has Zipadelli. They've got solid leadership there. I don't even know who's the director of competition at Hendrick Motorsports. Do you know who it is?
I do not, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, so what's that tell you right there? Yeah. But they just don't seem competitive at this point in time right now, and they need to make some changes as things go on. So, all righty, Kansas City. You want to move forward to Kansas City now? Are we done with Talladega? It was a great race, fun. We knew the big ones were going to happen. They all had fun, and good for Ryan Blaney. But that's the way that race is. Somebody steps out, and if you can keep the nose of your car clean and stay out of trouble, you have a great shot of winning this race. And that's generally what produces. And Ryan Blaney's no slouch. He's a great driver. So, it's not like this was a surprise. It's just unexpected. But, like I said, he jumbled up the points entirely and took it, 3 more cars down below him now, because now you have 2 winners. And now you've got teams that are going to be in a must-win situation going to Kansas City. What are your expectations for Kansas City?
Well, looking at this race, a year ago, oddly enough, Chase Elliott won this race. It's another 1.5 miles. I can expect domination from a guy like Martin Truex Jr. He's definitely one of my favorites going into this race, especially he's been the one who's been hot. I'd say Chase Elliott, look out for him. Look out for Bowman because he ran well here back in the spring. So did Stenhouse, funny enough, from what I remember. Kansas should be an interesting race just from how the aero package was at that race back in the spring, and I like to see how it's going to do. Obviously, this is going to be a day race, not a night race. So I think this is going to be an interesting race. It's going to be an intense race for sure because you're going to have 4 guys really fighting to keep their championship hopes alive in this case. So I really
all right. Well, let me ask you this question: can you get an intense race at a 1.5 mile track? Because I don't know that I've ever seen a really intense race at a 1.5 mile track.
Honestly,
these things are kind of parades. The 1.5 mile tracks are just the way they're built are kind of parades. And Kansas City is like Chicago Speedway. They're all kind of like it's a parade. So is it just going to be who prepares their car the best, or is it going to be who can win the race? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it can still provide good racing. I think, Kentucky provided one of the best finishes this season. Obviously, Talladega this past weekend was probably the best, but Kentucky provided a great finish a great battle between the Busch brothers, and I thought that race actually was the best Kentucky Cup race yet, because just for an example, I'm using Kentucky here because it wasn't like the past 2 years where
because it's where you live. It's where you live.
Well, okay, sure, but still, the last 2 races was completely dominated by Martin Truex Jr. This year, there were quite a few cars in contention. It wasn't like, this guy has been leading for 200 laps. No, it was more like, okay, the Stewart-Haas car, Suarez is out in front. Now it's, now it's Harvick, and now it's Logano, now it's Kyle Busch, now it's Kurt Busch, now it's, it just kind of switched and changed, and I thought it was a relatively entertaining race, and I think, especially with how they're doing the aero package, and of course the Gen 7 car, I think racing can get better there. It is true. I do think that these cookie cutter tracks, a lot of it's a parade, follow the leader, that kind of stuff. But
I think we all believe that NASCAR does the best job of any racing of the competition side of it. I mean, you have fenders, so you can rub, you can bump, you can grind, you can get on each other, and they limit the horsepower. And that's another question I wanted to ask of you, if I may. Impound racing. What is the point of impound racing?
I guess.
And if you tell me just saving money, to hell with it, because the big teams don't save money. They spend every penny they want to. I mean,
there's no cap.
Hendrick, Hendrick, they're all billionaires. I mean, they do this because they love the sport, not because they want to cut costs down. So are we just trying to I mean, is impound racing just designed to keep the lower 20 teams into the game, or explain the whole purpose of impound racing, because you're smart at this. If you can't, then I ask you a tough question.
Nah, it's all good. I only slept for 4 hours. Give me a second here. I mean, with impound racing, I understand it. It's like, I think impound racing would work if you qualified and raced on the same day. Or just like qualify, and then you got an hour in between, and then you race. Something like that. I think impound racing can work just like that. We talked about this last week with Dover, of course, because quite a few playoff drivers had some technical issues. Logano had to go behind the wall right before the green flag dropped.
Elliott went out on lap 3 or 4 with a blown engine because it was impounded. I mean, they couldn't tear his car apart. So
I can see the argument, which basically, once again, an impound race is basically after qualifying, teams cannot work on their cars. They can't do anything to it. That's what they have for the race. So I can understand the argument there. I think impound racing would work more if you qualified and raced on the same day.
And they've done that a couple races this year, haven't they not?
I'm pretty sure they have.
They have. Where they qualified in the morning. Yeah, they qualified in the morning and came back and raced in the afternoon, which, again, I don't think the cost really to the teams that matter is the reason why you should be doing this. And as a fan, you don't want to see, like me with the 9 car. I'm a diehard 9 car fan. So it's like when I watch him go out on lap 5 because he had impounded his car and his engine blew up on him, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm just going to go watch NFL. The heck with this. He's out. What do I care? I'll catch the highlights or watch it and watch because I always DVR the races. so they're always on. So I'll just catch it later on today and see who ends up winning the race. I don't think impound racing is good for the sport. I think they need to let these guys set the cars up for qualifying, let them go, or change qualifying. I mean, I liked the way they qualified when they did group qualifying, and ran that, and said, hey, everybody out, top 12 go, top 12 go, top 12 go. Whatever the number boils down to, but I don't think that impound racing, in my opinion, is good for the sport, because you get guys that, these cars are under so much stress every lap they take. I mean, we have no idea how much stress they're under. I mean, they're getting banged up, they're getting beat on, they're putting weight loads. These are 3,400-pound cars that are traveling at 200 miles an hour on a bank turn with G-forces that we don't have any idea of, and things go wrong. They break. I mean, you can't make it that strong. So I don't understand impound racing anyway. All right, so what's got to happen at Kansas City? Who's going to come out in front at Kansas City?
Something tells me this is another Martin Truex Jr. win.
Yeah.
I think he's been the best performing driver of anyone so far, and he's definitely on track to win his second championship as of right now. Now, of course, that could change. This is an elimination race after all, and after this round, you got 3 races to win to get yourself in contention to run for a championship. So I think, Truex and Hamlin are a couple guys going in there favorites. Maybe Logano. I'm going to throw in Elliott and Bowman in there for sure. Keselowski there, he's won there before. So just a few names that I would probably toss in there that I think could be some big names to pick from.
I mean, is this a race where some guys get kind of feisty? And I don't want to say dirty. I want to use the word feisty instead of dirty.
Aggressive.
They get feisty and say, look, I've got to bump you out of my way because I've got to get a win. I've got to go do this. I mean, yeah. I'm in desperation mode right now. I'm not in that position where I have enough points to put myself in the final 8. So I've got to get feisty with you. And if you're there and I'm running faster than you, I'm going to move you out of the way. If you can get there, is that the way this race kind of plays out?
Yeah, I think you'll see some. I think you'll see quite a few aggressive moves being made. Because the way this playoff system is, nowadays they race so much different than they did 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Just because it's very intense, it causes more wrecks, more action. You got stage points that also play a factor now, and then of course the points at the end of the race, and every position counts for an elimination race like Kansas.
Yeah. So of 9, 10, 11, and 12, Bowman, Elliott, Boyer, and Byron, do any of them make it up into the top 8, or are we pretty well? You're 18 points down at best. That's Bowman at 18 points down. Elliott, 22 points down. Boyer, 24 points down. Byron, 27 points down. Byron has to win. I mean, he just has to win. Really, Elliott, Boyer, and Bowman have to win. 22, 24, and 27. Bowman may have a chance if somebody has a catastrophe, but is there anybody out of that bottom 12 that can make it in?
There's always an outside chance. Again, Chase Elliott did win this race a year ago, so I think he may have a pretty decent shot as long as he doesn't have any mechanical issues or anything, of course. And say if like Logano or Keselowski or Harvick were to have a mechanical issue early in the race, that could shake things up for certain. You think and you're going in and going, yep, got plenty of points, we're good, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in the hole. That's what this does. One bad race, and one thing I'll say about this playoff system, if you have one bad race, you say like the first race of the round of 16 or 12 or whatever, one bad race will put you in a big hole. And at that point, yeah, you're going to have to win most likely.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's what happened to Elliott. I mean, he got out early in the race before Talladega and Dover, and he's done. And then he's now a guy who we thought could be in the Final Four easily. And I just use him as an example. But now he's done. I think he's done. I don't think he can make up 22 points. I mean, that's a lot of points to make up. You got to go past a lot of cars, and you have to have a lot of cars fail to make up 22 points. Or you have to just freaking win the race is what you've got to do. So we'll see how aggressive it gets. I think it's going to be an aggressive race.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a mile-and-a-half track. It's Kansas City, which is like, I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We also do have some silly season to get to as well.
Yeah, talk about that. Yeah. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. found a new home, didn't he?
Yes, that just popped up this morning. It has been confirmed that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will drive for JTG Daugherty Racing in the 37 next season. That is the car Chris Buescher is currently in, and he is replacing Ricky Stenhouse in the 17. So a little driver swap between the two drivers. I was kind of expecting Daniel Hemrick to line up in the 37, so it's interesting that Stenhouse, after many years of being a Ford driver and being a Roush developmental driver as well, his 32-year-old's moving on to the Chevy camp over at JTG Daugherty. Of course, sponsorship, not too much of a concern because Kroger, obviously. Although maybe I could see Sonny D coming over with him because, that could possibly tie into Kroger. They've been a big sponsor for the 17 team.
It's funny. I live in L.A., and Kroger out here is called Roush.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same thing. They just call it Roush out here. So it's the same place. Yeah. So anyway, that's a total unnecessary sidebar. Go ahead, back to what you were saying, if you can collect your thoughts again.
Yeah. So Stenhouse to the 37. That has been confirmed. Once again, the dominoes for silly season continue to fall. The 38 is still open, so maybe Hemrick goes there. I've heard rumblings about Corey LaJoie possibly. That 38 car is a big question mark, especially for Daniel Hemrick. Some of these guys are fighting to have a ride next season. I know Daniel Suarez will be having the
and remind everybody where Hemrick left. He was with
RCR.
RCR. So yeah, okay. And the RCR car was filled by who?
Tyler Reddick.
Okay. Now, is that a good move or not?
Well, I think RCR wanted or talked about doing a third car or, perhaps working with a satellite team. But I think, obviously, sponsorship money came to play. I think Tyler Reddick just had more backing than Daniel Hemrick did. Obviously, Hemrick getting the boot after a year. This is his rookie season in Cup. Honestly, I think it is a good move. Reddick has been tearing it up in the Xfinity Series this season. Last year he won the Xfinity Championship. So he's proven so far that it is not a fluke at all. It's a good decision. I think Reddick, and nothing against Hemrick. I think Hemrick's a pretty decent driver. But obviously, of course, Reddick has been tearing it up, and he's ready for the Cup Series. And Richard Childress did what he had to do, and I could see Daniel Hemrick potentially landing an Xfinity ride somewhere.
Okay. Do you have any speculation on any more silly season going on? I mean, who's on the line right now? Let's just talk for a few minutes about who's on the line right now. Who's safe and who's not safe? In your opinion, I mean, and we're all speculating on this, so we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I saw that Boyer just signed a new contract to stay with Stewart-Haas Racing. I read that this morning, correct?
Yep.
So he's locked in, and I think that's a great move. The only better move would be for Boyer to go into the booth and get up there, and because he's got the gift of gab, and he's a great fan of the sport and a great driver. But he just re-signed for, I think, till 2022, wouldn't it? Didn't it? What it was?
Yeah. And you're looking at...
So who else is in your mind right now, going down through the list of drivers? I mean, obviously the big boys aren't going to make any changes. But who else right now is like in play to say, man, we're going to hear about this in a week or two? Because we got what, 6 races left, I think, isn't it?
Let me see, 1, 2, 3,
6
4,
or 7, 5 races left. Yeah, so we have 5 races left. And who else is in play to say, you know what, we're opening up this seat and we're going to bring somebody young in? Because there is a lot of intent. And we even talked about Natalie Decker and Haley Deegan. I mean, you know, there's 2 females there. And we saw what Danica Patrick did for the sport when Haas brought her in, and she never won. Okay, I get that, but she changed the sport a little bit. Are these 2 in play at all to come into a seat yet? Are they ready for that yet or not?
They're nowhere near ready for Cup. In my
nowhere near ready?
Yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, they need time to develop. Biggest one is the 41 car. There's still a lot of negotiations going on, and we'll probably hear in a week or two whether Suarez will stay in the 41 or not. That's probably the biggest one for silly season. The front row cars, the 38's open. The 34 might be open. McDowell may stay there. He may not. The 32 team as well. Go Fast Racing. I think those are the biggest ones as far as the top 30 cars go. So because I mentioned the 41 car because Cole Custer, where does he go? That's the biggest concern here, is where does Custer go in all this mess? Because he's definitely ready for Cup. You know, Bell and Reddick have already solidified their Cup rights next year. What's going to happen with Custer? So, honestly, we
okay. Well, I'll get 2 questions for you then. The Xfinity's been running the unified body, the one-piece carbon fiber body. Is that why some of these teams are bringing these guys into it? Because it's a different body style. It runs differently. Its arrows or packages are different on them. Is that why you see a lot of these young guys coming up into the Cup Series all of a sudden? That, like, hey, maybe this guy knows how to run this car, and that's important. That's the first question I'll ask you.
I mean...
Or does it matter? If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I mean... Yeah. Brain farted you, didn't I?
I can't wait to catch up on sleep. Anyway, honestly,
I think it does. I think the aeros packages in these cars are going to be different, and I think that a lot of teams are sitting here and going, you know, these are guys who have driven these cars. The Cup boys haven't driven these cars, and we may get some advantage here at an early stage and get some better aero packaging done because they've worked these cars. You know, the Cup boys haven't really driven. They're still driving the old traditional NASCARs, which is great, but I think there's going to be a difference. I think the aeros are going to change entirely when this unibody comes out and things go on. So get somebody on board, get him trained, get him used to it, get him in the system, and see what happens. Okay. Then my second question for you is, how safe is Kurt Busch at Chip Ganassi?
I think Kurt Busch has pretty much re-signed at this point. I think he will be back in the one next season.
For another 1-year gig?
Yeah.
Or do they hand him a long-term contract? I mean, Kurt Busch has had a heck of a year. I mean, he's done well. I mean, you know, Ganassi Racing they're half an echelon below the top 5. They're there. I mean, they're there. They can compete, but they're half of a step behind everybody. And so you think he's good for the year? Kyle Larson's good for the year. You see anybody in jeopardy right now of losing their job? I mean, again, I wonder how safe Jimmy Johnson is, truthfully. That Hendrick doesn't say the amount of money we're paying you to do this, and the results you're bringing are not consummate. They're not together. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, looking at it, Kurt Busch has been, I think it's another 1-year stint. Jimmy Johnson has another year left on his contract. He's back in the 48. Ally Financial's already re-signed for a long-term thing. It's hard to say what Johnson will do next season. It's really hard to say because he wants to keep racing, and a lot of people believe he'll retire after 2020. We just don't know right now. Only time will tell.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to cover?
Well, Corey LaJoie made, there's an interesting comment here that Corey LaJoie made. He said that Chevy drivers have potential repercussions such as loss of company vehicle and sim time if they push another manufacturer to win at a plate track, said on the latest Sunday Money podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's a great comment. I mean, and how much has this become like F1, where F1 is all team racing? I mean, they don't care who wins. I mean, obviously, Mercedes wants Lewis Hamilton as their national, as a champion, but Valtteri Bottas wins last week. Ferrari's got Sebastian Vettel, but Charles Leclerc is pushing him to no end, and that's team racing. Is this what NASCAR is getting into now? It's 18 Chevy cars. I think there were 18 Chevy cars, I think 15 Ford cars, and 7 Toyotas. I think that was the breakdown of the race, if I can remember off the top of my head. So is this getting to be a problem in this sport, or is this the way it's just going?
I mean, I think personally it's just the super speedways where you're seeing that manufacturer alliance. You see the Fords work together and the Toyotas work together and the Chevys. Of course, the Toyotas actually end up making temporary alliances with the Chevys or the Fords just so that they can work their way up because there's not a whole lot of Toyotas in the field.
Numbers. It's a numbers game. Yeah, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A lot of people. Yeah, apparently a lot of people are not too thrilled with. A lot of people didn't seem too thrilled with what the whole Chevy thing about such as a loss of a company vehicle or sim time. They push another manufacturer. So I mean, I think that's kind of silly because it's just like, well, I mean, how else are they going to win? So I mean,
right.
Sometimes you have to, especially in those final few laps. It's every man for themselves. It doesn't matter what manufacturer it is. If I'm in third and I know I have a chance to win, I'm going to push whoever I can to get to the front. Simple as that.
Well, I think the announcers talked about that. It's like, well, you get down the last 20 laps, the whole manufacturing goes out the door. It's like somebody's got to want to win the race, and if you're not driving the race to win the race, then why are you there?
Mm-hmm.
If you're there just to be a manufacturer driver, well, like that's kind of how Valtteri Bottas is in F1. I mean, he sits back there, and generally he stays behind Lewis Hamilton as long as he covers for him and blocks and does everything for Hamilton. And this week he won. Bottas won, and just because Hamilton got off to a bad start and didn't have the equipment ready to go, and he couldn't catch. But generally, I don't like the sport going in that direction. I just want to see all the cars, and maybe with this new Gen 7 car, They're all built so equally. Is it going to go to IROC racing? Is that what we're heading toward? Do you remember IROC? Are you old enough to remember IROC?
Oh, yeah. I watched, in those last couple of years they ran, I watched IROC.
Yeah, they ran the Camaros. They ran the Camaros, I think they were, weren't they?
Back in the day. They later on ran the Pontiac Trans Ams or whatever.
Trans Am, yeah. Which is basically is a Camaro on a Pontiac label, so it doesn't really matter. But is that where the sport is heading back to now, to where we're just going to make every car equal, and or is NASCAR gone to a situation where their engineers are going to be the most important part of your team?
I mean, obviously, I read some of the notes on the Gen 7 car about, I think, how teams are going to have more of the ability to, do as they please. And I always believed that that was the problem I had with the car tomorrow. It was like, it's all the same body. You make the cars a little more stock. You simply, if I want to see a Mustang out there, if people want to see a Mustang or a Camaro, they should be able to see a Mustang or a Camaro and tell the difference. And I'm hopeful that's what the Gen 7 here is going to do, because I just personally believe that, the manufacturers should have a little more say in what the cars look like, and the teams and the drivers should be able to play around with the cars and have a little bit more freedom. Of course, there should always be certain specs and specifications. That should never go away. But,
Well, all right, here's a great question for you. They keep talking about the Camaros have the pointed nose, and they're the ones causing much of the damage and much of the wrecks because they don't have the square nose on the front of the car. They've got a point out there that gets people sideways real quickly and easily. Does Chevrolet need to fix that, or is that just the way it is? Or do the Chevy, the teams use it to their advantage? Say, yep, I can bump you easily and get you out of here real quick. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like that's something I've noticed since the Camaro came back in 2018, is that their front nose is rather pointed and it's very different. And obviously that's some pluses about the Gen 6 cars, that these cars are a little bit different, but they're not just quite. I guess they're not quite there yet. But looking at the Gen 6 car and looking at how the Camaros are designed, I still partially believe that maybe the Camaro wasn't designed as correctly because they were winning left and right with the SS, and
the Monte Carlo, the Monte Carlo. Yeah.
And the Monte Carlo and the Impala, and now with the Camaro, it just hasn't been working out. Hopefully, maybe you just go, okay, let's see if we can fix this for 2021 with the Gen 7, and let's see how different the car will be, and see if it can, have a little bit of a better advantage to the Toyotas and the Fords, and potentially other new OEMs that could come into the sport.
Yeah. Do you have any insight? And again, we're stretching this now, so we're going on. But you're bringing up great OEMs. Is there anybody else coming into NASCAR, or is it still just going to be Chevy, Ford, Toyota? Or is there anybody else wanting in this game or not?
From what I've heard, NASCAR's been talking to quite a few OEMs and manufacturers about joining when the Gen 7 car comes out. I've heard that they were talking to Honda executives at the Indy 500. I've heard some rumors about Hyundai coming in. So and everyone wants Dodge back, but I know for certainty that NASCAR is talking to potential manufacturers.
Well, my wife's got a Chrysler 300. It's wrecked as hell. She's backed into everything in the world. So we could run that car and maybe get somebody to fix it. How cool was it to have Dale Earnhardt's car pace the lap? I mean, how cool was that? Was that cool? I think it was cool.
Oh, it was a beautiful sight. I mean,
oh my gosh.
That was the car. That was the car.
RCR. Richard Childress drives it. Yeah, Richard Childress drives it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting. Yeah. How great is that?
Oh, it was amazing. Richard Chilton, and plus he went pretty fast in it too, and that's something I think a lot of fans will enjoy, and I certainly loved it. It was a beautiful moment just to see that infamous 3-car go around the track. It was like you're going back in time almost, and just listening to, and during the rain delay, it was cool just listening to Junior talk about that race too, because he was leading in those final laps and talking about do I work with my dad here? Do I let him by? I don't want him mad at me and stuff like that. It was just it was really interesting to hear him talk about it. So
I just thought that what an incredible tribute, and NASCAR gets that part of the sport right. They pay tribute to their heroes. Whether you're still alive or you've passed on, whatever you've done, I love NASCAR for doing that. So that's great. What's your surprise this weekend? Who surprises you this weekend?
In terms of who could surprise, judging by past races from what I remember, I would look out for Bowman, because he ran well there back in the spring. Even so did Chris Buescher, if I want to, throw out some left field names. Don't count out Chase Elliott at all. Again, he's one in Kansas.
He wouldn't be a surprise. You're expecting him to be, like I said, I just don't know if he can make up 22 points or whatever he's got to make up. I think it's 22 or 18, somewhere in that vicinity. He's 22 down. I don't think he can make up 22 if he doesn't win. I don't think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because everybody steps aside. Everybody steps aside and lets the playoff guys go by. And, that honks you off a little bit if you're like a Chase Elliott fan, which I am, and he can't make up any points because they're like, hey, get out of the way of these guys, let them race. It's like, no, just go race. Don't worry about it. So your surprise is, again, I interrupted you. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. So if I were to throw in a surprise name, probably Alex Bowman. He ran very strong there, finished second in this race back in the spring. So he could potentially be a name to look out for.
Okay. Anything else we need to cover?
I think that about does it if we want to make our final picks.
Yeah, make your picks. Go ahead.
All right.
Let me see. Let me write my names down right now.
Okay. You do that. I'll go ahead and make my picks.
Go ahead and make your picks.
I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. Surprise, because I kept saying he was a favorite, but just have that hunch. Martin Truex Jr., dark horses, Chase Elliott, and Alex Bowman.
Okay. I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. too. Logano, I think Logano's dangerous. He's always dangerous. And don't knock out Keselowski. This is the kind of race that he wins. He steady eddies himself a way through it. I think that a dark horse is Elliott. I think I always keep him as a dark horse. But I don't want to jinx him, which I will probably do. But I like Truex Jr. too. The car's running so strong right now. They've got it nailed down. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else?
Well, I think that about does it.
All right.
Besides that, you want to go ahead and just wrap things up here?
I'm trying to. Unfortunately, my computer, who we just spent $250 on to get our internet speed picked up, is not working. Go figure. No, it's working now. I got it.
Okay.
All right. So wrap us out of here. Get us out of here.
All righty. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of the NASCAR Show on the Grilling Truth, where legends speak. We'll talk about next week who makes it to the round of 8. From Steve Risley and myself, Alex Gray, we'll see you next time.